A major Second Amendment showdown is heading to the Supreme Court, drawing national attention and sparking intense debate across the country. At the heart of the case is Duncan versus Bonta, a legal challenge to California's controversial ban on magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. Under this law, it is a criminal offense to manufacture, import, sell, or even possess these magazines, items that many gun owners view as standard, everyday equipment for self-defense and sport shooting. Supporters of the ban argue that restricting magazine capacity can save lives by reducing the number of rounds a shooter can fire without reloading, potentially limiting the devastation of mass shootings and giving victims a chance to escape or intervene. On the other hand, opponents claim the law unfairly targets law-abiding citizens, making it harder for them to defend themselves and their families in dangerous situations. They argue that such restrictions infringe upon fundamental constitutional rights protected by the Second Amendment and set a troubling precedent for future gun regulations. After a sharply divided federal appeals court upheld California's ban, gun rights advocates quickly petitioned the Supreme Court, urging the justices to step in and resolve the issue once and for all. The outcome of this case could have far-reaching consequences, setting a national precedent that would impact not only California, but also other states with similar magazine restrictions, and potentially influence future gun legislation across America. Now, the Supreme Court justices face a pivotal decision. Will they clarify the true scope of the Second Amendment and its protections, or will they allow the current patchwork of state laws to remain in place, leaving the issue unresolved at the national level? The stakes are high, as states and citizens alike look for guidance on where the line should be drawn between public safety and individual rights. As the nation waits for the court's decision, the debate over gun control and constitutional freedoms continues to shape the American legal and political landscape. The debate over California's magazine ban pits public safety against gun rights. Proponents argue that limiting magazine capacity reduces casualties in mass shootings and gives law enforcement a tactical edge. They see the law as a common-sense measure to prevent bloodshed, not an attack on lawful gun ownership. Opponents, including gun rights groups, say these magazines are standard and essential for self-defense, sport, and competition. They argue the ban arbitrarily restricts a fundamental right and leaves citizens vulnerable, especially against criminals who ignore the law. Some also claim the law violates the Fifth Amendment by forcing people to surrender property without compensation. For gun rights advocates, the ban is an unconstitutional overreach that cannot be justified by public safety claims. Duncan v. Bonta has traveled a long, winding path through the courts, becoming one of the most closely watched legal battles over gun rights in recent years. The case has drawn national attention, with each new development sparking debate among legal experts, gun owners, and policymakers alike. In 2017, a district judge struck down California's ban on high-capacity magazines, calling it unconstitutional. However, the legal journey was far from over. The state quickly appealed, and after a series of hearings and legal arguments, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed the lower court's decision, ultimately upholding the law. This back and forth created confusion and uncertainty for both gun owners and law enforcement. The legal landscape shifted dramatically in 2022, when the Supreme Court's landmark Bruin decision changed how courts must evaluate gun laws. This ruling set a new standard, requiring judges to look beyond modern policy arguments and focus on the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. Under Bruin, courts are now required to search for historical precedent, not just balance public safety against constitutional rights. This means that any modern gun regulation must be consistent with the historical understanding of the Second Amendment at the time it was adopted. Despite this significant shift, the Ninth Circuit once again upheld California's magazine ban, a decision that surprised and frustrated many legal observers who expected the new standard to lead to a different outcome. Now, the plaintiffs are arguing that there is no historical basis for banning common firearm components like magazines, and they have asked the Supreme Court to step in and settle the issue once and for all. The stakes are high, as the outcome could affect gun laws nationwide. The case highlights deep divisions within the judiciary and among the public over the meaning and scope of the Second Amendment, reflecting broader debates about gun rights and public safety in America. The Supreme Court's response could finally resolve years of legal uncertainty, setting a precedent that will shape the future of gun regulation and constitutional rights for generations to come. The Supreme Court's Bruin ruling made history the key test for gun laws. Courts must now ask if a regulation matches the nation's tradition at the time the Second Amendment was adopted. If not, the law is likely unconstitutional, regardless of modern safety arguments. In Duncan versus Bonta, plaintiffs say there's no historical precedent for magazine capacity limits, while California points to past restrictions on dangerous and unusual weapons. The legal fight now centers on whether magazine bans fit within America's historical tradition of firearm regulation. The Supreme Court's answer will shape the future of gun laws nationwide. The debate is no longer just about policy, it's about history. California isn't alone in facing legal challenges to its magazine ban. New Jersey's similar magazine ban is also under fire in federal court, drawing significant attention from both legal experts and the public. The Third Circuit is rehearing the case en banc, which means all the judges in the circuit will reconsider the case together. This raises the possibility of a circuit split if it rules differently from the Ninth Circuit, which has already made its stance clear. A circuit split, where federal courts disagree on the same legal issue, makes it much more likely the Supreme Court will step in to resolve the issue, as it often does in such situations to ensure uniformity in the law across the country. If the Third Circuit strikes down New Jersey's ban, the pressure on the Supreme Court to take up Duncan versus Bonta will be immense, as it would need to address the conflicting rulings. Such a split would turn what is currently a regional dispute into a national constitutional question, affecting laws and policies across multiple states. Legal experts and advocates are watching closely, knowing the outcome could force the Supreme Court's hand, potentially leading to a landmark decision that could redefine gun rights and regulations in America. The stage is set for a definitive ruling on magazine bans across the country, a decision that could have far-reaching implications for gun legislation and constitutional rights. Duncan v. Bonta is just one of many battles over gun laws since Bruin. Courts nationwide are reconsidering bans on assault weapons, age limits, red flag laws, and more, all under the new historical test. Some laws, like California's one-gun-a-month rule, have already been struck down for lacking historical precedent. The result is a confusing patchwork. What's legal in one state may be banned in another. The Supreme Court is being asked to clarify these issues, but until it does, uncertainty reigns. The volume of litigation shows how divided America remains over gun rights. Each case, including Duncan, is a piece of the puzzle that will define the Second Amendment's future. The Supreme Court's decision on Duncan versus Bonta could reshape gun rights nationwide. If the court strikes down California's ban, similar laws in other states could fall, expanding access to standard capacity magazines for millions. A ruling upholding the ban would empower states to regulate firearms more strictly, even under the Bruin standard. If the court declines to hear the case, the legal patchwork will persist, leaving the national question unresolved. The outcome will signal the court's direction on the Second Amendment for years to come. Both sides are watching closely, knowing the decision will impact not just gun owners, but the entire country. The future of gun rights and public safety hangs in the balance.